more advantage to the incumbents. Or the cards are going to get reshuffled under the pressure of reform, under the pressure of new economies and new form of economies, and the incumbents will have to relinquish their power. You can think about that at different levels. You can think about that at the macroeconomic level. So, for example, if advantage brings more advantage, it means that the stability of the world economy is going to continue to be in the hands of the G7 and a small number of financial institutions. If, on the other hand, the cards get reshuffled, you could find yourself in a situation where the world economy is now in the hands not of a G something, but of multiple regional groups, multiple financial institutions, and even you could find different currencies emerging. We've all heard about Bitcoin. We've heard perhaps about more local alternative currencies like the Sol. In a case where advantage continues to bring more advantage to the incumbents, the dollar remains the reference, and perhaps two or three other currencies really matter in the world economy. In a world where the cards get reshuffled, you can find yourself in a completely different currency environment. At the microeconomic level, to take another example, the battle that we see, it's a legislative battle, although sometimes it's also a street fight, between taxis and Uber, is to me a perfect example of the crossroad. Either the incumbents, i.e. the taxis, will continue to have the barriers to entry in the profession and control that particular market, or under the pressure of reform, we're going to have multiple new entrants and multiple new ways of providing the service. So that's the philosophy of that's behind the two scenarios. The first scenario, where advantage brings more advantage, we call mountains, because mountain is solid, pyramidal, doesn't move very easily, it's very stable. It has its advantages, it has its disadvantages. In this scenario, which we apply then to the world of energy, I'll speak briefly about energy because that's our business, but then I'll move quite rapidly to urban development. In this particular scenario, we project how the energy demand is going to be addressed in the future, and we see that oil, gas are slightly diminishing. Coal remains a very important source of energy. Over here, it feels very bizarre, but trust me, there are a lot of places in the world where coal is still the dominant source of energy. And if we look at other forms of energy, the one in a sort of a yellowish color at the top that we see becoming big is nuclear. Why nuclear? Because nuclear energy is the archetype of energy that requires the backing of government, the massive investment in new units, infrastructure, etc. That is not something that you can do at the scale of a village. The other scenario where the cards get reshuffled, we call oceans, because it's a lot more fluid, it's prone to change, it's a lot more unstable as well. And in this scenario, what we see emerging as a new source of energy in the energy mix by the year 2050 or 2060 is solar. Why solar? Because solar is the only source of energy, as we know today, that you can harness at a small scale. You can decide in your village that you're going to make your village self-sufficient with solar powered electricity. You can even make an individual decision to have solar panel on your house. So that is the typical example of something that can rise from the bottom up if the legislative environment evolves to make it possible. So these are the two scenarios that we've been considering. Now, if I take those scenarios as lenses, if you want, and I look at the world of in general and urbanization in particular through those lenses, I can come to different conclusions as to how the challenges of urbanizations are going to be addressed. So let me first start with something that we've heard yesterday, and it's quite well known. Today, we are 7 billion people on Earth, half living in urban environments. By 2050, we estimate, there are different estimates around, but they all move in the same direction. We're going to be possibly 9 billion on Earth, with 75% living in urban environment. So if you think about it, that's almost a doubling of the urban population. If those numbers don't speak directly to your mind, just consider that this is the equivalent of building one New York City every 6 weeks. And that's not a prediction, that's already what is happening today. And this is a trend that matters, not just because of the gigantic numbers, but because well-designed cities can be a fantastic tool for the optimization of resources and quality of life. And conversely, poorly designed cities will put additional pressure on resources, on which we all know that there is already too much pressure, and they can further degrade the quality of life. Now, of course, all of this is happening, well, a lot of this is happening in Asia. This was a picture of Shanghai, so that's the bund, which was taken only 25 years ago. I say only 25 years ago because that's when I started working. I would encourage you to look at, or to focus on the two skyscrapers on the left, the one with the pointy brown roof and the one with the flat greenish roof. Because 25 years on, those two buildings are still there. They are still there, but they've been completely dwarfed by the pace of urban development that has taken place in Shanghai. And for those who've been there, it's only Shanghai downtown. Shanghai is a lot bigger than this. So, with the pace of urbanization, we see a number of challenges, but challenges are also opportunities. And as Plato would say, necessity is the mother of invention. So what I'm going to do now is to take you through rapidly 6 of the major challenges that we see with urbanization going forward, and then conclude with how those challenges could be addressed in the mountain scenario and in the ocean scenario. The first challenge is overcrowding. Today we estimate that 1/3 of the urban population lives in slum conditions. I don't know about you, but to me it's completely obvious that solutions will have to be found for this. I don't know what the solution is, but I'm absolutely convinced that solutions will emerge to do this. If you take a mountain view, and I'm not talking about Google, I'm talking about my scenarios, if you take a mountain view, you see municipalities that are erasing the slums, building high-rises in their place, and relocating the people. There are other places that take a more ocean view. What they do is, they go meet the people in the slums, and they say, if we could give you some money, or if we could invest in your community, what is it that you would like us to do as a matter of priority? And they essentially improve the slums. So I'm not saying that one solution is better than the other. I'm saying that there are different ways by which municipalities are addressing the challenge. And for companies like ourselves, the only question to ask is whether we want to be part of the solution or not. The next challenge is public health. in a lot of places in South Asia, which are not as advanced economically as the US and Japan and Western Europe, but that are already quite advanced or emerging very fast, 40% of the waste water is not collected through a sewage system. And if you combine that with the density of population, and the density of population is going to continue to grow, you've got a major public health issue on your hands. And at this point, let me share a very personal belief, which is that the purpose of innovation is not for me to receive a signal in my connected watch. The purpose of innovation is human progress. If you look at a little bit of the history, between 1750 and 1950, so in the 200 years that cover the first and second industrial revolution, the life expectancy of 3/4 of humanity has doubled. It was 30 to 40 years old in 1750, and it reached between 70 and 80 years old in 1950. Not for the whole world, but for 3/4 of humanity. To me, that exemplifies the purpose of innovation. But all these gains could be jeopardized if we fail to address effectively the challenges of urbanization. Likewise for pollution. Today we estimate that half of the world's urban population lives in an environment where the air pollution exceeds the World Health Organization recommended limit by a factor of 2.5. That is, again, something which will have to be addressed one way or the other. Otherwise, we're going to start seeing life expectancy going down, as simple as that. And there are a lot of solutions that are available, from the simplest solutions like paving dirt roads in places where dirt particulate are a major contributing factor to the air pollution, to more sophisticated technologies whereby you harness chemistry in order to fix pollutants on the pavement from where you can collect them. There is room to change the status quo. We've all seen the pictures of smoke in places like China, Beijing in particular. Let me risk a prediction for once. I would not be surprised if by the end of this decade, and I'm not doing Kennedy, by the end of this decade, the Chinese government announces that they're going to take 2 or 3 medium-sized cities, so that's about Paris or London, and in those 2 medium-sized cities, they're going to throw everything at it in terms of taking out air pollution. All electric cars, all car sharing, energy positive buildings, you name it, everything. And then, based on these pilots, they're going to see if it has an impact, and I believe it would have. And if it has an impact on in these 3 real scale pilots, then you can imagine what can be done later to larger cities. They have the track record to make this kind of decision. I think they can do it. Congestion is the one that we all suffer from almost every day. I don't have to insist much on it. We just need to recognize that this is a major contributing factor to the previous problem of air pollution, and it's a major source of inefficiency for the economy and for quality of life. Changing tack a little bit, the penultimate challenge that I have is governance. A city is a very big, complex organization. Now, typically, the way we manage complex systems is by breaking them down into small chunks and optimizing every part. But we all know in our various organizations that the optimum for each part rarely makes the optimum for the whole system. So we need to inject systemic thinking into the governance of cities, and that's what a lot of municipalities are grappling with today. So let me take an example. We know today that we can harvest energy through the road, whether in the form of heat or photovoltaic, but we can have road that harvest energies. Now, this is not a decision that the road maintenance business, the road maintenance department of any city will take on its own, because that's always going to be more expensive. It's a decision that can only be taken if you look at the total picture of infrastructure for transport, energy, utility, data, and then you make an integrated decision. And the last one is funding. If you all wonder whether all of these challenges are worth pursuing, we estimate, and that's when I say we, it's not Shelley, it's Booz Allen who made that calculation, that $350 trillion are going to be spent in urban infrastructure and urban operation throughout the next 30 years. So if your boss tells you to follow the money, that's a pretty good lead. Now, these are the 6 challenges: overcrowding, public health, pollution, congestion, governance, and funding. So, in 2 minutes, how they can be addressed in different scenarios. In a mountain scenario, the key words are large-scale, centralized, and integrated. Like I said, systemic thinking is necessary it's necessary to inject systemic thinking into the way to govern the city, but this is done through a centralized governance, the master planning of integrated solutions for energy, transport, data, and utility. And for companies, it means that we need to be able to play with large-scale public-private partnerships, and also to build structured alliances with other companies that have different capabilities than ours. In an ocean scenarios, the keywords are different. The keywords are local, devolved, and flexible. Systemic thinking continues to be needed to be injected, just as much as in the mountain scenario, but here it's done differently. Systemic thinking is pursued by devolving more powers to local communities within the cities, because in some cities you will have slums as well as very affluent quarters. So you can decide to do things differently, give more power to local communities, provide them with the legislative flexibility to experiment with different solutions that are more tailored to their needs, and give them access to localized funding. For companies like ours, it means that we need to be able to engage in an asymmetrical way with smaller communities that may be smaller but are no less demanding, and to co-create with them localized, non-standardized solutions. So that's what I wanted to say. In spite of all the thinking that's been put into the scenarios, we know that they describe the world in very black and white terms, and that in fact the reality will not be just grey, it will be many shades of grey. But if we nurture a capability to address those 2 different scenarios, and if we are prepared to embrace the future and not just prolong the past, then we can make it happen. Thank you. Happy to take any questions in English ou en français. All right, time for the next speaker then.